and kind of set out our vision of what this time is all about. And it's about staff and committee working together to figure out solutions for your particular committee or your particular ministry context. We're not here necessarily to be spoon feeding answers. We want to really be helping you guys learn how to fish, so to speak, and not be doing the fishing for you, because you know your world, you know your leaders, you know your adult community. You're acutely aware of the trials and challenges and opportunities that you have in your town. And so we want to come alongside and help facilitate opportunities for you two to be able to collaborate and tackle things that the Lord has before you. So your task after each call is to set up a conversation with committee and staff and working towards solutions that you need to get taken care of.
Yep, because the only person that should be spoon feeding anybody right now is CJ. So just so you know that. So way to go on that. All right, today what we're talking about is about our committee as a community. And even this word of missional community, that you as a committee and as the area being a missional community. Now, let me just define some of those things. Missional is that we're all together headed towards a goal or a mission. And that vision for us within Young Life is sharing the love of Jesus with high school kids and middle school kids and teen moms and college kids in our communities, in our context that we're in. And a community is we're just going to encompass this: your committee, your leaders, your staff, the kids involved, friends of Young Life, and supporters. That's your community. So if we're thinking about in terms of that as your missional community, so you have a vision, you're headed somewhere, everybody knows the vision, everybody knows the mission you're doing, and you're doing this in community, which is overlapping between all those different sects of leaders, staff, and committee and adults in your communities. Then think about this quote: community without mission is self-absorption. And so if you just have a community and you have no mission, you have no drive of where you're headed, it just becomes just about you. It becomes a really closed off self-absorption. And mission without community is exhaustion. If you have mission, but you're not doing community together with each other and with other people, you just feel pretty much alone and you're doing it all on your own and it's all on your shoulders and it becomes just exhaustion. And you could even ask your staff people or a volunteer leader, how does it feel? Who's the community around them on mission with them? So as we think about this in context of committee, we have to start with just this, and you'll probably hear it a couple of times. Committee is not just committee meetings. Your committee is not just a committee meeting and then say, oh yeah, we're doing this missional community. We're doing community together because we meet up once a month. And that's going to be one of those kickers for us as we think through missional community. Community is this overlap of leaders, kids, staff, and integrating the community of adults with the community of kids and leaders, that you're integrating them together. So there's 2 points that I want to make with missional community. If you're not Christ-centered and if you're not every kid focused, it's going to tend to fall apart if you're not Christ-centered and every kid focused. If you're not looking at your community and saying, all right, look, how do we reach every kid? And if you're not Christ-centered in that, you're going to fail, because you're going to try to do it out of your own power, and you're going to try to just point it down to one and say, oh yeah, we're good enough. We're good enough like this. It will fall apart. So community is first knowing others' names. And that's what we teach our volunteer leaders. Hey, know kids' names. Know them by name so you can pray for them. And then it's time. After you know each other's name, it's time. And time creates space to know each other's stories and reasons why they're like in the room. So community is asking questions of each other. It's knowing the favorites of each other and how to care for them. It's then taking that community and reminding each other of the mission's vision, which I will remind this, and if you talk to me enough, you'll hear me say over and over again, people forget vision every 7 days. So that mission needs to be reminded every 7 days to your people, to the people that you're around. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And it's not for any other reason. I'm not saying any of your committees are incompetent or don't know that. I have to be reminded by my boss weekly of why I'm doing this and where we're headed and what are we doing. And so to remind people every 7 days of that. And then it's going and doing that together. And then also in that community is looking at the people who are around you, inviting them to stack hands, look each other in the eye, and tell each other what you see in them. And that builds that community as you have mission and saying, here's what I see in you.
Awesome. And welcome to those of you who just joined us. I think I saw Stephanie from Walla Walla, who's the area director there. Hey, and Tanita Maddox, who's our associate regional director for the kind of north chunk of Washington and northern Idaho. Welcome. And Chris Bacon, the committee chair in North Spokane. We're so glad you guys are all here. So thanks for joining us. And with this mission and community, we are not thinking, let's add some more things to do. We're thinking that if you have missional community and are intentional about that, you can really go for missional community and the things that you're already doing as a committee, or probably already doing right now. So we're going to talk about what those 4 things are that you guys can stack hands on right now as a committee and staff. And one is prayer. You know, probably you already know that you should be praying for leaders and praying for each other. And prayer does something special, right? It reminds us of our mission, and it also builds community. And so there are some fabulous things you can do. You can go for a prayer walk with committee volunteers, even prospective leaders, maybe some parents. You can go for a prayer walk around one of your schools. If your schools are shut down right now, it's an amazing time to do a prayer walk because you can do it whenever you want. There are different like prayer campaigns you can do involving pictures of leaders, refrigerator magnets, those sorts of things. You can adopt leaders, have people on your committee maybe adopt leaders and pray for them, or have special prayer teams for each leader team. Another thing, and this is something that you might skip over. What about praying for personal prayer requests at your committee meeting, asking each other how you're doing? That's going to build some community to find out that someone has a prodigal child, or someone is dealing with an aging parent and it's really stressful on them right now. And you guys could just stop your committee meeting and pray for those requests. It's not novel, but sometimes we forget to do those simple things with prayer. So you can think, okay, how can we utilize prayer for missional community?
And how in that community do you just take time to just pause and pray for something? Just pray for something when you're in a smaller group. Pray something with your one person. Just say, hey, let's just pause. Let's pray for that leader right now. Let's pray for that kid right now. Let's pray for that committee member right now. Let's pray for that person in our community. The next one that is a lot of bang for your buck is just to gather together as a family in a family atmosphere. Now you might go, oh, in COVID, how can we do that? Well, there still are ways to gather, but this is also thinking outside of the like ministry business time. I am prone, and I will tell you this, that in a committee meeting or in times working with people, I just want to get straight to business, and then to stop and just be like, hey, let's actually ask questions of each other. Let's talk. Let's pause to talk in those family gatherings. The best thing that some people have quoted about family gatherings is you get a lot of connections for very little effort. It's about creating time to have opportunities for connection in that missional community. And that's as we're putting in the context of committee and leaders and kids overlapping each other. Some examples of that is good breaking bread together, having meals. Maybe as we're getting to the holiday season, you get a couple people together and you bake cookies for donors. And there's nothing better than having 6 guys try to figure out a recipe to bake chocolate chip cookies and then go deliver it to it. I've done it before. We didn't actually deliver it because it tasted that bad. So, because you have to taste them. Some were burnt too. Or how about to put this opportunity on your calendar once a year to do an everybody's birthday party? There's a great example of a family gathering. If you were to walk down the street, which is not one of your tasks I'm going to give you today, and say happy birthday to somebody, chances are they will smile at you and say, it's not my birthday. Or if it is, they'll be really excited, but they'll still smile at you. There's a connection when we celebrate everyone's birthday.
You know, we talk about Christian witness and, our functioning in the world. And I think of that term witness when it comes to being together and building community. And that's just an important thing, to have that sense of, connectedness with one with another. And we get to do that with staff and leaders. Committee have that opportunity when it comes to just being in the world of kids and doing that together. There's an opportunity there to just take adults into the community and show up where kids are at, or leaders are at. For instance, if you've never done this before with your committee, have committee show up at a leader meeting, one or two of you, or make a meal for them, host it at your house, build a bridge between leaders and the committee by being intentional with some of the meetings like that. Another opportunity, if committee have never been to, especially newer committee, if they've never been to a club or a campaigner activity, walk across that bridge and be a part of that activity and go see it in action. And during the summer months and even weekend camps at properties that Young Life has, Washington Family Ranch and Malibu, just the opportunity to be an adult guest at camp can be a real win for being in the world of leaders and in the world of kids, and seeing the mission up close and personal.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And chances are you have people on your committee who are dedicated to fulfill a certain function on your committee or in your community. Maybe they're in charge of relational centered engagement or TDS finances. Maybe they're in charge of leader care, or they're in charge of banquet or event or something like that. And all of that is awesome. And there are two ways to look at it. One, I think about it like pie. It's November. So I'm thinking about, well, it's almost November. I'm thinking about pie. And every person on your committee has a piece of the pie. And it's really important, that they understand how and what is expected with their piece of the pie. Maybe it's prayer support or RCE or any of those roles that I just mentioned, right? But so they need to know what it is that they're doing, but also to have like 100% ownership of that piece of pie. And sometimes, well, that usually involves a committee chair and a staff person saying, hey, I give you permission to have 100% ownership of this piece of the pie. Or maybe it's a 50-50%, but they need to be very clear on their ownership of that piece of pie, because chances are they're passionate about that piece of pie that they have volunteered for, or that you've asked them to fulfill because you've seen them gifted in that area. So we want them to feel like they have ownership of that piece of pie, but also that they understand how their piece of pie fits into the whole pie, right? They need to know how their relationship-centered engagement really causes the area to disciple and reach high school kids and middle school kids, or whatever it is that your area is committed to. How does their slice of the pie contribute to that? Because if they lose sight of that, to have energy and to really go after leaders, if they're not connected to the why and the whole pie. So some practical things might be that you would involve your committee in your strategic planning, that it's not just the area director saying, here's our plan, here's our vision. And it's not just the area director and committee chair doing that, but that the whole committee can take part in a meeting like that. And here's another one, that after the vision is defined, that you would look back at that vision like every time. If you're planning a banquet, you go back to the whole pie. What's this whole pie about again? Oh yeah, that's why we're doing this. Why am I making these phone calls? Why am I washing these cards? Whatever. We're keeping sight of the whole pie.
Yep. So here's a question that we're going to have you pause and take back to your committee and talk about as a committee and with your staff is, what opportunities is your area creating for your committee to serve within the world of kids and leaders? What opportunities are you creating for that? We forget to create opportunities. At times we think, okay, I just need to get these amount of people here. I need to get them there. Instead of saying, how do we create an opportunity for people to see this missional community, to see a community in action, to have your committee and your leaders intermingle. You might have some learned helplessness that just makes you go, you know what, it just doesn't work. My committee's too busy and my leaders don't want to do it. And I can't get them together. Well, how about you go back and say, how are we doing at creating opportunities for those people to overlap? And maybe just a couple of them overlap with each other. And that's okay, because if you've created opportunities for that, your leaders to not feel alone, the mission to just feel like it's just all on our own shoulders, and for there to be no community around us. So as we think about that, an example could be, hey, you create an opportunity for adults and leaders to get together, and that could be at a barbecue setting, and for them all to invite somebody to come alongside of them and come to something. And that's probably post-COVID, but you know what? There's still things that you can do in this time, in this place.
Mm-hmm. One question we say, this is the question. Ooh, there's a cool option, Tyler. Zoom trivia night. That's fun. And that kind of rolls right into this. There is this question we dare to ask, and we said this to the staff in Coeur d'Alene last week, and maybe they said it in Ellensburg. I'm not sure, but here's the question that you can ask your committee chair if you dare, and that is this: would you go to that committee meeting if you weren't running it? If you weren't obligated, would you want to go? Is it compelling enough to go? And there are some components I think that really draw people in. One is the relational. Do you have a relational sense to your committee? And I'm not calling, not just your committee meeting, but your whole committee. Is it relational? Does it fulfill some relational need? The second is spiritual. Like spiritual will bond you and it'll just propel you further. Is there a spiritual component? And then last is like, how's the mind engaged? How's the mission component? So those are three components. Dare to have fun. I know in North Spokane, our culture there is that we usually open up a bottle of wine and we really enjoy hanging out together. Man, some other committees I think have had fun playing games. They even got some scratch tickets involved. And I just want to say, it doesn't have to involve sinning, you guys. You guys can have fun in all kinds of ways. But have some fun. Have a compelling reason to go.
Just having that community and having those relationships are just lifeblood, really for gathering. And it's not just a one-way thing too. I mean, we have the opportunity to invest in others and really utilize our relationships kind of from a development standpoint. Being on committee isn't just about fundraising. It's looking around you and seeing who could be with us. Who can we be intentional with to share the vision of Young Life, build relationship with them, being intentional. Maybe some people well enough that you see their gifting and personality at work and how that could help the Young Life community. Maybe there's someone who has just caught your attention and you want to investigate, you want to begin investing a little bit into that relationship. As a committee, everyone having a list of 3 people can be a huge asset for building the team. And having the check in on people as you're kind of working with that list can be a great thing. So the vision here would be, what if everyone on committee had a list of 3 people that they were praying about, investing in, and then you discuss that at your committee meeting and then kind of process that together in terms of potential people being in the loop for committee.
And I just want to have one thought that might be playing out in your head is this is not just about recruiting. The bottom layer of this is that we come to know Jesus more and the adults around us come to know Jesus more. If that's in the missional community, they come to know Jesus more in this, that is the foundation. That's why we say if your missional community is not about going deeper and staying Christ focused and then thinking about every kid in your community, the Christ focus is the center part of that. So if you have a list of 3 and you're saying, hey, I'm developing myself in these people so that we all will see Christ more. That is the key component of this. It's not just about the layer being, how do we recruit people onto this team? It's how do we bring people into a mission community so we can all see Jesus more? Because we're not called to do this alone. Isolation, is a lot of us have felt, is the number one thing that I would say the enemy uses against us. Is like, you got to stay isolated, which means then you're going to get exhausted, you're going to get tired, and you're going to feel like you're all by yourself in all this. So that's why we talk about missional community, and that's why we say this is not just about a committee meeting. This is about your committee and your community coming together as one. So here's the task that we're going to send you away with. Create these opportunities. Create opportunities for that overlap. You might just start with your committee and say, hey, committee, do we know each other's story? Do we know each other, like why they're in the room? And it might just be having every committee person call another committee person and say, hey, I just want to hear why you're in the room and your story of how you got here. And it could be beyond that. It could be you're at a place now where you say, hey, we're going to get in little small groups and we're going to create little pockets of committee and leaders overlapping each other and just talking and getting to know each other and breaking bread that way. Or it could be having a committee member call a leader and say, hey, why are you in the room and how can we help you? And let me hear why you're here. Those are even simple opportunities that we create. Instead of saying, hey, I want to get more people there, is to say, hey, how do I create an opportunity to engage with more people in our community, make them vision carriers and in this missional community together with us. So that's what we're sending you home with, to create those opportunities. So here's the question for you. What's from here, and this is where you will unmute yourself and talk. From here, what's your next step? Where do you feel like the first task is from here for you to do?
Well, I'll go. Can you guys hear me? Thumbs up. Yep. Yes. Okay. It looked like people were shaking their heads like I was on mute still. I think I love the last part that you just said there with the overlap and finding out people's stories, as far as why they are a part of our committee and why they choose to show up, to our committee meetings. I think sometimes that gets overlooked, and especially if people maybe have been around for a while and we have newer folks, they certainly aren't going to have that connection. And so I like just that idea of creating those opportunities for overlap and then asking them what their story is, and really finding out what people's passions are. I think if you can help facilitate that and find out why they're passionate about being in the room, then they're going to own that slice of pie, I think, even more. So I think that's great.
All right. Thanks, Kirk. Anybody else? What's your first task from here?
I think one of the things we kind of already started talking about this, but just kind of figuring out some ways outside of a meeting time to, break bread together, to do something fun, just to begin to make that more a part of our routine. I mean, I think everyone likes each other a lot and are friends, but we don't do anything as a group outside of our monthly meeting. So I feel like that's the next step for us.
Thanks, Craig.
We might go to North Spokane and have some of their wine, possibly.
North Spokane's known for their wine. Yeah, especially by people in Yakima.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
One more person.
Yeah, Jim, I was just thinking here in North Idaho, one of the things we would do, and it would be really the kind of dual purpose, it would be, relational, just having an icebreaker at the beginning of our committee meeting saying, tell us one thing that energizes you about Young Life and one thing that drains you. And that would help to gain some greater understanding of the people there, but also help me as committee chair understand where I can tap into their talents best as well. So I like purposeful activities like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Eric, what I love about that is it's asking questions. You create opportunities by asking questions, especially in a room of adults. If you can then get them to think about how they were in high school is another step that you can take, is just say, hey, what would you identify yourself in high school? Like, what would you call yourself in high school? Or what would you I said this to staff last week. What was your nickname in high school? And it starts a conversation. What were you most nervous about when it came to, I don't know, anything about high school? I was terrified that I was going to drop my lunch on the ground and then not be able to eat, right? Was that just me that was worried about the tray? Yeah.
I think so, but that's cool.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah. Well, I'm just going to say, does anybody else have anything they'd like to, a next task or step they want to take from here? Becky, were you thinking about saying something?
Well, Tyler and I had just talked yesterday about moving the next committee meeting to a brewery. So that's going to be our first step. So just doing some fun activities at the beginning of the meeting and just some more personal connecting. So yeah.
Thanks, Becky. Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. I've heard you do a pretty good job at helping facilitate a fun committee atmosphere. Is there one takeaway that you have for us?
We have a very outspoken group, so that's good. We've felt very isolated in COVID because we're just on Zoom, so that's been a huge bummer. Drinking wine alone is no fun. But the best thing we have going for us is CJ. She, of course, she had her sabbatical and her baby. So we had a deal. We just said, all right, which team leaders want to hook up with a committee member. So we've kept that going. So while CJ was out, we would just have a committee member contact that team leader, and that's been a really good thing for our committee. We just feel more connected, and the leaders feel heard. So that's been a positive thing. We just keep that up. But I love that brewery idea because we need to be together.
Yep. Thanks. I love that. It just like it seems like, oh, like if we just had leaders connect with committee, and that's what part of this is about. It's just saying, all right, who do we need to connect with, and making that happen. That's creating those opportunities. Well, thank you guys so much for being on this. We're going to stay on this. If you have any